I was having a conversation with a client the other day, and I wanted to make this video because I know it's something that a lot of businesses are also facing. Now, look, just to give you some context, this particular client, they were a software company. We were helping the people in marketing, essentially put together a bit of a better acquisition channel. However, in most big companies, and you could be in one of these companies yourself, and I've seen this time and time again, marketing and sales tend to not align, okay? So I was trying to figure out, well, where's the bottleneck? Because they were getting essentially a lot more leads coming in, a lot more qualified leads at that coming in as well. Then when they were passed over to sales, sales would have a conversation, but they wouldn't convert, they wouldn't close. And we were trying to figure out why. So we went through a host of different possibilities. And then I asked the question of, well, how many times are your salespeople following up with these customers? And the answer that the marketing person gave to me was they don't do follow-ups. They don't believe in follow-ups. And to be honest, my jaw kind of hit the floor at that stage. And the client looked back at me and just shook their head and said, I know, Paul, I know. Now, the reason that I wanted to bring this up is because the follow-ups are not just an important stage for from a sales perspective when you already have that particular lead, but this is where, and I've actually I yesterday I made a video about somewhat kind of a similar thing as well, where companies keep saying we need more leads, we need more leads. Well, you have to determine first of all what your bottleneck is to figure out, well, do you actually need more leads? Because that's what we did for this particular client. Okay, we were able to help them with their acquisition system. We were able to essentially get them qualified leads from many different channels, but they weren't converting. And if they're not converting, it doesn't mean anything. Okay, and I see this all the time where businesses just say, we need more leads, we need more leads, and they try and get more leads, but there's nothing happening either through the pipeline or through the funnel, whatever way you want to look at it, because there's some bottleneck somewhere. Now, in this particular instance, and again, it's different for all sorts of companies, but they happen to be a bit of a bigger company where they had different departments. So again, there were salespeople on the department. So I don't know if the sales manager for that department told people not to do follow-ups and just focus on new leads or whatever it was, but it is much easier to close somebody by just following up with them a few times rather than trying to convert new people all the time. Now, you can put a process into place for that as well. So again, you just need to put in a system into place where, because again, a follow up doesn't take that long to do. Look, I know a lot of salespeople as well hate doing follow ups. Look, I totally kind of, I'm not going to say I totally understand it, but I somewhat kind of get that as well because they just want to focus on new information, new leads, new opportunities essentially. And in most CRMs, they are called opportunities. But follow up is part of the game. The people who are, as in the businesses that are out there that are winning and converting clients, they are bringing their clients through a specific journey at every single stage. So that includes sales as well. Again, I see so many bigger companies specifically where when marketing hands over to sales, it just isn't the best relationship between them internally for marketing and sales. Usually it needs to be a case of sales, marketing, and in most cases, operations need to get on at on the same page. They need to be aligned. They need to essentially say, "This is, for example, who we're going after." Okay, these are the channels that we'll use to attract those particular people. Okay, here's our offer to those people, and when they're in the pipeline, these are the steps that we take. Okay, so again, marketing could be essentially following up with them to keep showing them that you are the right person for the job, that you are the right company, you've done this before, you've got your awards and certificates and case studies and whatever it might be, all those elements of trust, okay? Even content, show them different content pieces that you have. Again, just showing trust and trust and trust, okay? Because they're a software company, and in most software companies, again, depending on how big that particular company is and what their ticket price is usually, the call to action at that stage is book a call, because getting the lead is not the end of the journey, not by any means at all, okay? So at the next stage then, when somebody's in the pipeline, they've given you their email information, said, yes, I want to know more, please tell me more, I'm interested. Again, marketing does have then the job of uh, following up with that lead by not trying to say, oh, hop on a call with us and speak to sales and all that sort of stuff, which again, I know most companies do. Sometimes that works. Again, it really depends on how you have things set up internally. But when you can continuously show trust elements again and again and again to that particular person, again, without overwhelming them or without kind of bothering them to say, oh yeah, just talk to sales, because especially in this day and age, a lot of people are so resistant so resistant to get on a sales call because they don't want to be sold to. Nobody wants to be sold to, even if it's something that you do truly need as well. Okay. And again, everybody's busy. There's a million things that are going on with that particular decision maker who needs to get on a call with you or whatever it might be. Okay. So that's only one part of the journey. At some point, that person then will book a call because marketing's built up enough trust with them. And then they will talk to sales. Sales then have their own journey that they need to bring that particular person through. And it's very similar to marketing. It's not just a one touch point and it's a one and done situation. With sales, it's the exact same thing. So, like for most companies, especially if you're in B2B, the sales cycle is like an average of 6 to 12 months. And like sometimes people in operations understand this, sometimes C suites understand this. But I tend to find that a lot of salespeople, again, who are in those positions in those particular kind of companies, they tend not to understand that, and they want to just go after the people who are going to convert immediately. Look, I understand it's a quick win, it's a dopamine hit, it's all this kind of good stuff. But in order to convert more people, and you're probably on a commission if you're a salesperson, to convert more of those people so you earn even more commission, it is 100% worth your time to do follow-ups. Follow-ups are where it's going to close, because even if you are like well trained on how the sales call should go, your agenda in the sales call, being in control, all that sort of stuff, answering questions, all this sort of stuff, even getting to the end. And if you're fantastic at objection handling, that doesn't always mean that even if you're able to handle objections, that person can close there and then, okay? Especially in, like, for example, this particular client we were dealing with, they're usually speaking with bigger companies, and the bigger a company gets, the more red tape there is, the more regulations there is. There's more, well, it needs to be approved by this department, it needs to be so and so with that department. So, for example, like they could be speaking to a client who, again, is another big company, and it's not a case of, even though it's somewhat, let's say you're on with a decision maker, even if it's the person at the very top, let's say you're talking to the CEO, okay? The CEO essentially, yes, they can make the decisions, but you probably won't be able to close the sale on that particular call. The reason being is because they'll have to go, yeah, we'll just put you in touch with finance and we'll give you their details and they'll get over to you and blah, 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 and back and forth. Even if you essentially get a yes, until the revenue is in the bank account of the company you work for, that's still not across the line. So you still have to continue doing that. So follow up with their finance people. What is it that you need filled out? How can we help you? Do you need us to put together a PO number? Do you need us to do whatever it might be? There's going to be a process there as well. And again, this is different for every single company. It's different for every single company that you're going to deal with, unless you specifically only deal with companies who do X million of revenue a year or whatever it might be. Okay. Of course, if you're dealing with smaller companies, again, the smaller a company is, the more quicker it is to move that along. But of course, the ticket size of the revenue that you make is going to be typically smaller as well. Okay. So the bigger that this gets, the longer it typically takes, but the higher ticket price at the end as well. Okay. So look, I just wanted to make this video because, again, it's something that I know a lot of companies, especially bigger companies, do deal with. There does need to be alignment when it comes to this sort of stuff. So make sure that your marketing, your sales, everybody is aligned. And again, I know that can be initially kind of butting heads and that sort of stuff, and they don't understand you're doing this, and because they're doing that, and that doesn't make sense for what you're doing. And look, there might be some awkward conversations at the start, but just make sure that, again, have other people in the room, such as operations and whoever needs to be involved with essentially the full circle of how this is going to go. Everybody gets on the same page. Everyone has their own essentially SOPs or checklists to follow. And again, that's the only way that this works for everybody. Because again, if sales are able to follow their own checklist, which includes follow-ups and all that sort of stuff, that means that they're able to close, which means that the leads that marketing were able to get, they can see, where did that lead come from? Let's do more of that because we know it converts. And then again, operations can say, this is all working. Let's improve this or XYZ, whatever it might be as well. Okay. So look, hopefully you got some value from that. If this is something that you're familiar with, or you've been down this path before, or even your kind of clients deal with this as well, and you want a bit of assistance with this, you can check out the first link in the description if you want to put together your full acquisition system so that this is aligned the whole way through the business.